Our third speaker in this conference is Jeanne Smith, and Jeanne is currently the Director of the Division of Criminal Justice, Colorado Department of Public Safety. She was appointed as the Director of the Division of Criminal Justice in April of 2007. Ms. Smith is President of the National Criminal Justice Association and within the state serves on the Colorado Witness Protection Board and the Colorado Criminal and Juvenile Justice Commission. She's a very busy leader. She's previously served as chair of the Juvenile Clemency Board under Governor Bill Ritter. She was elected district attorney for the 4th Judicial District of Colorado for 8 years, from January 1997 through January of 2005. She also served as a prosecutor in that office for 22 years. From February 2005 through March of 2007, she was the Deputy Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Justice Section of the Colorado Attorney General's Office. Ms. Smith received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Illinois with a major in economics. Her Juris Doctorate was awarded by the University of Illinois College of Law. It's a great privilege to welcome to the podium our next speaker, Jeanne M. Smith.
Good afternoon. I am so glad y'all came back after lunch. That makes me feel really good. Now, I saw a sign. It's in the women's bathroom, so for you guys, let me share this with you. And it says to stand up and walk around whenever possible, which I thought was an interesting place to put that as I was sitting there reading the sign. But anyway, I don't know if you have that in the gentleman's side or not, but it leads me to tell you to please feel free to stand up, because I know in the afternoons especially we get a little anxious as we sit, and I don't want you to get up and feel like you have to leave. Get up and stay. That will make me feel better. Okay, leadership. Leadership means to guide, to have authority, to have power. How many of you think that you belong in the jobs you're in? Ooh, a couple of hands not going up here. You're fired. Come on, power is cool, right? It's like the general said, it's good to be the king. There is nothing wrong with having a level of confidence and feeling like you belong in the job that you're in. Confidence is not the same as arrogance. Confidence is me getting up here thinking I have any business following the general and the chief and being able to give you something worthwhile. Arrogance is thinking you'll like it at the end of the day. But there is nothing wrong with being confident. If you aren't, how do you expect the people you tell what to do to believe in what you're telling them? It's got to come across with confidence. Power can be a dangerous thing, though, right? Oh, and Matt showed me how to do all this, and I immediately ignored him. So we're going to get this up here in just a minute. This is me. In case you missed it, that's my name. Cool. All right. Abraham Lincoln. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Because that's where we find out what people are made of. Are you made of someone? Are you made of the characteristics people can trust? We throw these words around a lot: trust, integrity, honesty, ethics. But what are you made of inside? The test for that is to give you some power and see what you do with it. These are not in any particular order. They're just things that I think are important in being a leader. One is to model, motivate, decide, communicate, and execute. So once again, these are not magic. There's lots of other words you could put up here, but these are ones that are meaningful for me. And I'll tell you, as we're going along this afternoon, I'll share with you things that I think went well in some of my careers, and places where, boy, I really stepped in it. Because we learn from our mistakes better than what we learn from our successes. And they stick with you longer, don't they? I can't tell you how many cases I won when I was doing trials. I can tell you every minute of every case I lost. That's how we learn, and that's okay, because they're good lessons. So let's talk about modeling. There is no such thing as a born leader. Their doctor doesn't say to the new parents, "Congratulations, you have a leader." Maybe there are characteristics we like to see, but in reality, we have to develop these skills. Have you taken personality inventories before? Myers-Briggs? Yeah. Believe it or not, I was an introvert on the Myers-Briggs test, and it's true. In high school, I wanted to be on student council, but you had to get up in front of the entire school and give a speech. I was scared to death, so I ran as a write-in candidate. But you learn to get in it, and I won, which really kind of hacked off the guy that got up and gave a speech. But you learn to overcome some of your natural inclinations if it doesn't fit with where you need to be as a leader. Has anybody taken the colors test, the ones where you're gold, green, blue, or orange? Yeah, we've got a few. Here's the interesting thing I think about that. Gold is kind of the authority side, and people think, okay, we're going to do a test of this particular profession, and let's take law enforcement. They're going to be almost all gold, and I know how to lead a group of golds. It's not true. Every group they have ever studied has been a cross-section of all of those personality types. In this room, you would think, okay, we're all kind of unified. Not true. You are all different personality types, and you all have the capability of being a great leader. It doesn't require a certain personality type to do it. And you can change where you are in those scales. Early on in my career, back in my DA days, I took that test and I was a strong gold. No surprise, right? My job was to tell juries what I wanted them to do. If I told them to find somebody guilty, I wanted them to go back and vote before they ever said hello. My job was to work with law enforcement. And sometimes I felt like that took a little bit of authority, took a little bit of a requirement for me to stand up and be a little directive. Whether I was right or not, I don't know. But I was a gold. I now work with people who are researchers and social workers, and they are a challenge. They want to have input into my decisions. They think everyone should come to consensus. This is not my natural state. So some of you are chuckling because you know that. So I've had to change and adjust. I retook the test recently, hysterical. I scored even across the board, green, gold, blue, and orange, which, they tell me, means one of two things. It means I can adapt, change, work with people of different personalities, or it means my multiple personality disorder is now florid and I should be on medication. One of the two. We're not sure. But the point of that is, you can change. When you read books and you listen to folks, and one of the speakers mentioned it earlier, there's a book out there on every leadership style you can imagine. You know, get the right people on the boat and row. Okay. 7 habits, follow these 7 habits and you're done. Okay. But the reality is, a good leader knows their own style, A great leader can adapt their style to what your team needs. Find out what leads your team and be that person. I have a particular employee now who is deep into process. She's one of my researchers. She has to process everything. And I sit there and tap my foot because I'm waiting for her to get to the decision that I want her to get to, because I already know what that is. I don't know if I'm right or not, I just know where I want her to go. And we had to sit down and have a discussion because she knew that I was impatient. When she would come in to talk to me, I don't have a very good poker face apparently. And she knew that I was getting impatient with her. So finally we sat down and she said, I just have to talk all the way around it before I get to where I need to go. And if I can't talk about it, I can't get there. Oh, I get it. So she will come into my office now and she'll say, can you read green today? And I'll either say yes, or I might say, as I've done sometimes, I just can't be green today. Today's a really gold day for me. Can you wait? But we have that discussion because I know that's the leadership she needs, is to help her talk that through. So you have to trust yourself. Give just a minute for this to soak in. Trusting yourself means you have to know yourself. If you are the bum who got yourself drunk last night and spent all your money, and you don't trust yourself, then we got a problem. You don't get to be that person. And you all know that, or you wouldn't be in these jobs. You don't get to be the person who screws up. When I was DA, I'm not saying I ever did, but if I needed an evening at a tavern, that tavern had to be out of the county, right? With somebody else driving, okay, let's put that in. But I couldn't do that in town. One of my successors in office forgot that lesson. But you had to model the behavior you expect from others. It wasn't that I held myself above the law, it was that I had to model what I expected from everybody else. Now, there's another part of that. It's your ability to hide your panic from others. Now, I want to spend a little time on this, because it's like, oh yeah, got that. Think of how many ways in the English language we have of saying this. Be the duck, right? Calm on top of the water, paddling like crazy underneath. Sure. Never let them see you sweat. That's another one. Give them the poker face. We've got a dozen different ways of saying showing your panic is not a good thing. And as a leader, it is a disaster. How are people going to follow you if what they see is panic? And I want to go back to what Chief Edwards was saying and how he thought that the lieutenant who had been shot showed amazing leadership because he didn't panic even after he'd been shot. What he showed was leadership. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, would I have wanted to work for me today? Would I have wanted to be around me today? Did you let your temper go? Because if you did, you lost control. Maybe you don't call it panic, but you lost control. Did I bring my home life into the office and I was less patient with people than I should have been? Then you weren't the person that you need to be as a leader. There's a little bit of acting to this, right? Because you don't get to respond in the way you might like to. I'll give you a closer example. I had a person, one of my middle managers, come into my office the other day. They had an annual report due to the legislature. This isn't drama, this isn't high drama, but the annual report wasn't done on time, and what was done was crap. Can I say crap?
You did.
That's what it was. My first reaction was that my adrenaline went through the roof, and I wanted to shake him and say, why are you giving me this? We talked for 6 months about the fact that this was due. I told you how to do it. I told you who to work with, and this is what I get? This is one of my good stories, I'll just tell you that. I did not say any of that, because I knew if I opened my mouth, what was going to come out would be something I'd have to apologize for. I hate doing that. So I said, let's talk about this tomorrow. I went home, screamed in the kitchen, went back the next day, and said, this is unacceptable. How are we going to fix this and get it out right and make sure that it doesn't happen next year? I thought I was pretty darn calm. My manager said to me later, I've never seen you that mad. I was thinking, you should have seen me last night in the kitchen. But the point there is you can do things to control your emotions. Again, back to what Chief Edwards was talking about, how adrenaline kicks in and you have to slow yourself down. There are studies now, and folks in law enforcement, if they haven't seen these, are going to be seeing them. There are studies on officer-involved shootings. Why in one situation does an officer pull the weapon and fire, and in the next situation, very similar, they don't? What's the difference? The studies are coming out, in part, showing that one of the differences is, does the officer have a level of experience with that type of situation? Not do they have 10 years on the job versus 5 years on the job, but do they have any experience with that type of situation? To test the theory that that type of experience is valuable, what this particular study group did was take officers and put them in a situation with a very vocal, barking dog, violent dog situation. Okay, and because you're law enforcement and nonprofits who love us, I can share this story with you. You can shoot people and it's bad. You shoot a dog, you are in headlines for a month, right? I had a case when I was DA, cat got shot with an arrow. I got petitions from citizens asking me to get the death penalty for the person who had shot the arrow, more than I ever got on any child abuse case I ever prosecuted. Disappointing, but goes to show there was a big initiative to try and get officers not to shoot dogs, okay? And now it's a law in Colorado. We're pretty happy about that. The legislature is not one of my favorite entities. Occasionally that bias seeps out in the things that I talk about. I'll do my best. So go back to the research study. What they did was put officers in a controlled situation where a dog was beginning an attack. They measured the officer's physiological response to that attack. They found that right up front, they went from 0 to 100 miles an hour immediately. By the third or fourth time, the adrenaline rush wasn't nearly as high. They were literally able to slow down in their minds the action they were in and make a better decision. You can slow down time in your mind to make a better decision. And it's true whether it's a shooting situation, it's true whether you're in a situation of leadership and supervision where things have gotten pretty warm and you need to slow it down in your mind so you can make a better decision. There's ways to do it. I know it sounds a little bit like, oh, let's go eat green tea and that'll cure everything. But it's really true, and the physiological studies have proven it over and over again. Motivate. This is one of my favorite motivational slides. Lemmings jumping over a cliff. One little lemming in the middle jumps up and says, "Whoa! Great idea. Absolutely the right idea at the right time." But nobody listens. The team is not motivated to listen to that one little lemming. The cartoon is captioned "The Emergence of a Leader." Maybe yes, or maybe he's just going to get run over. Because you've got to motivate your team to come with you. Sometimes in military terms we hear, you can't turn a battleship on a dime. You can't just say, "Okay, everybody turn left," and it happens. It takes time, it takes motivation, and you have to work on it, because otherwise you're the lemming standing up in the crowd saying stop, and no one listens to you. It's the old, how can you be a leader if no one follows you? Well, you're not, truly. If no one follows you, you're not. So how do we motivate people when we're in government and nonprofit? What's the one thing we think businesses in the private sector can do that we can't? Anybody? Pay money. Because we are somehow trained to believe that money is the motivator. And that's a lie. I don't think government and nonprofits are in any of the worst position for motivation, because money is not the motivator. And getting back to the question about how do you motivate volunteers, right? People are there for a whole different reason. Think of it in your own lives. If when you open up your paycheck at the end of the week, there's an extra $10 in it, does it make you think, hey, I must be a really good worker. I'm really valued. Because if you think about it, that $10 means you got a raise of somewhere around $1,000 before taxes. That's not too shabby. Right? But somehow what it looks like in the paycheck isn't very motivating. Because money is not what drives us to do a good job. And yes, people are going to say that, but they're really not. A couple examples of this. One I'm borrowing from a very dear friend who was going into an office that had been in a lot of turmoil. And don't look at my dear friend Bill Elder, because it's not his story. This is somebody else's story. The office at the time had been in so much turmoil it was literally in the headlines. And the local headlines were all about the terrible morale and the fact that there was no ethical leadership. On top of that, the county was freezing pay. So there was going to be no raises for anybody. On top of that, you've got a new leader coming in. People are wondering if they're going to have their jobs or not. It was a pretty tense time. So what my friend did was send out a survey saying, what's your number one question coming into this new administration? What can I answer for you? And he thought he was going to hear, yeah, you want to volunteer for this one? Sure.
No, I'll make you a bet, because I did something similar.
Okay.
Jeanne Day.
You're so outlying.
Is that it?
Hang on, I'll get there. Okay, so he thought he was going to get, I'm worried I won't be able to support my family. I'm worried I won't have a job. I'm worried that when I lose the next case, you're going to come screaming at me because it's going to be in the newspaper. The number one question, by far not even in the contest, was, do we still get casual Fridays? Wow.
That is true.
It is true,
It's the
isn't
same
it?
thing I got.
Those of you who've been through this understand what I'm saying here. But But that's what was important. It wasn't the money. Money wasn't important. What was important was their work environment. And really what that question was translating to is, am I going to be happy working here? Do you still care that I am happy working here? And yeah, it came out like, do we still get casual Fridays? But what they were looking for was, do you care enough about me to make this a happy place to be? Dress code is kind of a funny thing too. If you have not, well, let me start here. Law enforcement people are lucky, right? You think they have uniforms so that they're identifiable and it's a safety thing? Baloney. They have uniforms so that they don't have to say, okay, do tank tops and capris violate the code or not? It's the God's truth. I hate those questions. I finally gave up. Somebody who used to work for me is laughing because they used to call me Attila, the dress code person. Old school, I can't help it. So, when women were first wearing pants to court, freaked me out, which tells you a little bit about my age. Yes, this is chemically enhanced. Thank you very much. It's going to stay that way. But dress code was a problem. I think I finally found the answer, though. I sent out my message this year, and it said, if when people see you coming down the street, they say, which way to the beach, that's where you should be going. If, on the other hand, they say, where do you work? Come on into the office. That's as close as I could ever get. If anybody comes up with a solution to that, not all problems in life are big, right? I think I'm frozen again here, Matt.
All right.
So we'll keep going. If you can come up and help me, thanks. Not all motivation is positive, is it? Those of you who have kids have probably read some of the Raising Children books about how you need to say 7 positive things for every negative thing. Because it goes back to the fact that people focus, thank you, perfect. People focus on the negative. Attila's team leadership philosophy was more stick, less carrot. Do you want to work for that person? Do you want the people who work for you to think of you that way? Is it productive? No. Over the long run, it is not. Most people who are in their jobs because they care about them want to do a good job. If they screw up, they beat themselves up more than you ever could. Generally, very gentle reminders from you do a lot more than the stick. If you use the stick, understand that they will remember that stick for at least a year, maybe longer. I haven't done a time study on this one. But if you use the stick, recognize that that's what you're doing, and make it a point to come back time after time after time with the carrot, because it's going to take at least 7 carrots to overcome their memory of what happened with the stick. It's just like raising kids in that particular arena. A side story, those of you who have children will understand this. It is also how you become humble and realize how you come across to people. My daughter is now 19, but from the point in time she was 13, I was acutely aware I was the stupidest person to ever walk the earth. Humility just comes with the territory. You have to keep it as a leader as well. Leaders have to make decisions. This is where I'm going to back up a little bit on what I said earlier, that there are no born leaders. I have become convinced that there are people who cannot make decisions. They spend so much time analyzing, they're afraid to death of being responsible for the decision. They will do anything possible to put it on your desk rather than theirs. Those people probably should never be in leadership roles, because you have to be able to reach a decision and reach some finality. But as a leader, how do you get information? Red at the top is all the information that exists about a particular problem. Okay? Gold is the information that your subordinate has gathered about that particular problem. They can't get everything, right? Green is what they think is important enough to pass on to you. Now, that may be colored by the fact that some of the information they really don't think is important, or they've already decided where they want you to go, so they only tell you what portion of the information they think will get you to agree with where they want you to go. Also possible. Dangerous, and also possible. Blue is what they actually tell you. They meant to tell you more, but either there wasn't time or they kind of forgot some of it in the heat of the moment, whatever. Dark blue is what you hear. We are all human. If we hear 10 minutes worth of information, we can't remember all of it. We will hear only a portion of it. Purple is what you finally rely on in making your decision. So what have we done here? We've taken a large amount of information, and you make your decision based on the drip that comes out the end of the funnel. That is scary. And you're thinking, well, wait, I want to know everything. I want to know that whole red circle. Forget it. You don't have the time. You have delegated that responsibility to others. And if you trust them, you have to trust them to give you the right information. Because you can't micromanage, right? Micromanage is a bad word. There's a reason it's a bad word. Because micromanaging isn't managing, it's doing the dang job yourself. If you're going to do that, you are not a manager, you are not a leader. Fire everybody under you and go get the job done yourself, if you think you've got time to do it. If you don't, you have to learn to let go of all the other stuff in the funnel. And that can be pretty scary, but that's how your decisions get made. Decisions also get made through collaboration. This is one of my favorite cartoons, I confess. Sometimes I think the collaborative process would work better without you. But it goes back to teamwork. And it goes back to getting people to buy in to the mission and the decisions that you want to make so that they will follow you and they won't, like the rest of the lemming flock, go racing off the end of the cliff. So I want to do a quick, what's the value of collaboration lesson. I want you in your chairs, without talking to your neighbors or cheating off anybody's paper, for the next 60 seconds, write down as many similarities as you can think of between a refrigerator and a fish. Okay, spend the first 15 seconds looking at me like I'm crazy. Fine, use up your time. As many similarities as you can think of between a refrigerator and a fish. Thank you, Matt. I was in the church choir. Can you tell? 30 seconds. Pressure's on. Somebody's out there thinking, I never hooked a refrigerator, just a tire. Elder, you don't have even one.
I have two.
Just so you, all right. All right, time's up. Does anybody have more than 5? 1. Good. How many more than 3? A few more. More than 2? Quite a few. Anybody not get any at all? All right. Okay. Some throw out one of yours. They both stink. You've seen my kitchen. Okay? Good. Give me one of yours. Water in both of them. Fish live in water. That's a good one. You did well in science. I'm not going to call on you until last. Okay. Who else? What'd you have?
I had they both like it cool versus hot.
Very good. We're going on the temperature side, Fletcher.
Different colors.
They come in different colors. Oh, some people are going, I wish I had that one. Go ahead. Limited capacity to hold things. Excellent. Okay. Yes, sir.
And they both have eggs in them.
Both have eggs in there. Nice. Nice. Good. Okay. Okay, Mr. 5. What else did you have? Food source. You can eat what's in them. What else?
Both be smooth.
Okay.
They could both potentially float.
Stretching that one.
We're good now. But that's okay. I appreciate, right? We're collaborating here. I appreciate the collaborative approach because all ideas have value. Not so much on that one, but still value. What else? Others were already said. Anybody have one that wasn't mentioned, Bill?
Fins.
Fins?
Cooling fins on them.
Whoa.
That's what you're sharing.
Okay.
Maybe that was a little deep.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Eventually they both die.
Oh gosh,
All right.
Hey.
they don't
Hooked
talk.
up?
Plays an art.
You have to hook it up.
They don't talk.
They don't talk. Need to be clean. So, do you get the point here? The collaboration brings in more ideas than you could ever hope to think of sitting in your chair by yourself. It's important to do. As painful as it may be, it is critically important to do for a couple reasons. One, you come up with some really good ideas. 2, it gets people engaged and buying in to whatever decisions you're trying to make. But ultimately, deciding means you actually have to reach the decision. And as Walt Disney said, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. If you are the kind of person that has to engage in turning over every single rock, you will drive people up a tree. They need you to decide. They're hungry for you to decide. And then you have to stick with it. Decision means you don't get to change it the next day. You know, why do we think that phrase, trust us, we're from the government, has so many negative connotations? Part of it is you can't rely upon it to be consistent one day to the next. It may change tomorrow. But when you decide, you have to at least allow time for that decision to stay in place and for people to be able to follow it. You've got to begin doing. Communicate. Deliver the message. Again, Chief Edwards was talking about this. The General talked about it in his presentation. You have to be able to pass the message along in a way that it can be received. And I'm going to share a personal preference here. So this has nothing to do with any studies. But I truly believe that emails are death to personal relationships. as a leader, this is me talking, again, no study, no book, never use an email to discipline somebody, ever, ever, ever. You should never communicate emotion in an email. Emotion doesn't come across in emails. Emails are wonderful for sharing information. I have a piece of information, you need it, I'm going to push this button and send it. You can't use it to lead. People don't know how to react to what you said. How many times have you seen an email and you kind of went, ooh, they sound upset with me? Something like, please get this done ASAP. Now, you put it in small caps, you didn't yell, you didn't put it in capital letters, right? Maybe you put it in blue. But it still comes across kind of like, ugh. Emails are horrible. Here's the other thing I think emails do. And electronic communication in general. You are always available to your team. Now, isn't that a wonderful thing? Yay! I don't think so. How do we grow leaders if we never let them make their own decisions? When I started out, it was far enough ago in prehistoric times that we didn't have Blackberries and cell phones. So when I was at a meeting, no one could get to me. And I had a judge say to me one time, boy, you must really trust the people who work for you. Well, duh. Of course I do. That's why they're in those positions, because I trust them to get the job done when I'm not there. But now, in this day and age, how many decisions do we even allow people to make? And it's not so much allow. What are they willing to do without notifying you? CC everybody in the world so that my backside's covered, right? Don't ever hit reply all. Holy mackerel. We are not allowing people to be in positions where they can make decisions, unless it's going to take some action on your part to force that to happen. To say, just do it. You want to tell me about it afterwards? Fine, but do it. Because you want to grow leaders in your own organization. The delivery of your communication matters not only in the method of delivery, whether it's email or other things, and I'm suggesting email is one of the poorest ways, but your style is important. And I want to give you just a quick example of how style can kill a message. I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Would that have ever lasted in history? Of course not. Of course not. But how did that message come across? And I'm not one to try and pretend like I could step into the shoes of that great orator. But the message came across more like this. I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Totally different message, right? Totally different delivery on my part, totally different reception on your part. So think about when you're sending a message to your subordinates of what you want them to do, when you're trying to get on the mission that Roland described and get them passionate about the mission, you've got to have passion yourselves. And you've got to let that passion show in the way you're delivering the message to them. And maybe it's not standing up at a podium. Maybe it's having an event Maybe it's having the how do we implement our mission event, and you have cookies. Food is a great motivator, I'm just telling you. But think about consciously how you're delivering the message that you want to get across to people, and do everything so intentionally that the end result is exactly where you want it to be. The last thing I want to talk about is execution. I know, as a DA, that has some different connotations. God, I miss those days. Decisions are great, but if we can't make them happen, it's just another strategic plan sitting on a shelf. Can I tell you how I break out in a rash when somebody says, we're going to do another strategic plan? And yet, if we don't do them and find that mission and be able to turn that mission into action steps, and that's where I think we fail many times. We have a great mission, we have a wonderful value statement, but we've never told the receptionist at the front desk what it means to that person's job. What is that person supposed to do on a day-to-day basis that reach your mission? And you all know the person at the front desk is key, right? That's the first public contact. What face are they presenting? How do you let them know what they do is valued as part of your mission? You've got to have smaller action steps, and that's where I think a lot of us fail. I'm terribly guilty of this, of not turning that into actions that are meaningful on a day-to-day basis for somebody to say, I know what I'm supposed to do today, and I know how my job fits into the larger picture. And part of it is, how do you measure success? There was discussion earlier about, is success writing a certain number of tickets? Is success in the nonprofit world making a certain number of contacts with customers who come in the door? Do you measure by number? For some jobs, that works. But let's say your job is encouraging police-community relations. How do you measure whether or not you did well in that job? My job, a lot of it, is convening people to get together to talk about issues. I'm a convener, put that one on your resume. Hard to measure success in that job, but it's important to figure out a way as a manager to measure so that the person doing the job knows what you expect from them and knows when they have succeeded. It shouldn't be a surprise to them. Getting the right people on the bus is a challenge in government and in nonprofits as well, particularly in government because we can't fire people. And the general talked about this. You don't get to come in and say, okay, 50 of my mid-level managers are out the door. But one of the things we do sometimes is allow people to continue failing. And you don't have to. You really don't have to. One of the ways we allow people to continue to fail is by not holding them accountable on a regular basis. Forget the performance evaluation for a minute and talk about if you've got a troubled employee. How often do you meet with them and say, okay, here were your goals for the week. Did you meet them? If not, why not? Was it my failure in communication, or was it yours in execution at the other end? Because there's a mutual responsibility there. When I first started in my current position, there was an administrative assistant who was a sweet, sweet person, has been there for years. Everybody loved her, but she was incompetent. She could answer the phone, but she was also supposed to be taking minutes at meetings. Just terrible at it. So what had happened over time is other people started covering for her and filling in and doing her job because they knew she did it so poorly, but they wanted to protect her. Attila came in and said, this job description isn't being met. She either needs to meet it or she needs to fail. We need to let her fail if she can't do this job. Because sometimes that's the best thing for your organization. Tough decisions to make, tough things to do, especially to nice people. And it was probably not something that not a job she should ever have been put into. But sometimes a good leader is someone who lets the failure occur in order to be able to address it and get rid of it. And those are tough. The other thing I want to leave you with on the execution is when you are bringing in a new idea, understand that you need to let your staff let go of at least two things they're working on if you want that new idea to succeed. And I'm telling you this, and you won't believe it, and you won't do it, because I don't either. Because what can you let go of? We have to do everything we're doing. But this is implementation science. If you're doing any reading about how to change organizations, they're going to talk about implementation. And if you're bringing in a behavior change, you have to take something off their plate. Otherwise, the message you're sending them is, you're not working full time. I expect you to have time for this new thing because you're not working full time. So you got to let go of things that you either don't need or aren't working. And that's a hard thing to do. How many of you ever worked on grants? You get grants to do some new thing? Sure. As soon as that thing comes in, we're attached to it now, right? That's important. And we automatically believe it works, and we don't want to let go of it. Nobody ever wants to say, ugh, this didn't turn out the way we were supposed to. Forget that. Let it go, and let's go down this new path. Tough thing, but it's one of the things that you as a leader have to be able to do. I'm going to leave you just with this thought, and it isn't mine. It's from a philosopher named Goethe, many hundreds of years ago, who said this: boldness has genius and magic in it. Begin it now. And that's where I hope you as leaders can get to, is to be bold, to be geniuses, because you all have it in you. Thank you.